The Hindus and Catholics in Bombay, CWD Chawls, and perhaps almost anywhere in India, may as well have lived on different planets. They saw each other daily and greeted each other occasionally, but their paths rarely crossed. Ravan and Eddy too went their separate ways. It was not just a question of different religions and cultures. They shared neither a common colonial heritage nor a common language. India won independence from the British in 1947. The tiny state of Goa, tucked into a pocket of the subcontinent, was a Portuguese colony till 1961. When the Catholics from the CWD Chawls went home to Goa, they needed a Portuguese passport. The children went to English medium schools run by Catholic priests and nuns in Bombay. They learned Marathi, the local language of the region, under duress for a few years and tried to forget it as quickly as possible thereafter.
Hello and welcome to the Wire interview. Today we have the celebrated author Kiran Nagarkar, author of works, writer of works such as Ravan and Eddy, Bedtime Story, Black Tulip, and of course the famous Cuckold. Kiran, welcome to the Wire. I have to start with saying that, of course, as a fan of your books and as a reader of all of them, I always think of you as the quintessential Bombay writer. But of course, you're much more than that. In a sense, you're the quintessential Rajasthan writer also, because Cuckold is set in medieval Rajasthan. Let's talk about some your earliest work. You were in advertising at that stage, I think, and then you wrote Saat Sakam Trechalis in Marathi, which is 7 times 6 is 43, and immediately ran into trouble.
Actually, I started writing it much before I went into advertising. I was actually doing my master's when I started writing it, and 1/3 of it was published by Dilip Chittre in his father's magazine called Abhiruchi, and it took me a long time to finish it because some Marathi publisher stole it and published it with the 1/3 part that was already out.
It was in Marathi, your work?
Yes, it was my very first book in Marathi, and people keep asking me why did I abandon Marathi. The question is, why did I abandon English? Because my entire education, barring the first 4 grades, was in English. So I have never been able to explain why I switched. I think I did it because I did not even think about it. I mean, there's no question in my mind about that. And to this day, I am extremely grateful to whatever the powers that be that one day told me, without even thinking about it, I wrote one short story in Marathi, 1 page only, and the next day I started writing the novel without even knowing that I was writing a novel.
When was this?
This was in 1967.
No, you mentioned, we'll come to the language issue because that's a major part of your life's work as centered around that debate, especially in the early days.
Yeah.
They stole 1/3 of the book and they published it. And what was the reaction?
No, then 2 of my professors, to whom I owe almost everything as a writer or as a human being, they went across and tried to cajole, threaten, coax this guy into not letting the book out, because it was only 1/3, and he had absolutely no permission to do this. But Marathi publishers, you must bear in mind, are a tribe with a mind of their own. I don't think any laws apply to them.
And then those days perhaps less so.
Oh, much, much less so. So by the time I published the book, full book, it was 74. So there's a huge gap.
And much of it was, a bit of it was out already.
Yeah, that much of it was out. But you know, Abhiruchi at that time was already on its, not its deathbed, but close to it. So it was not a very heavily read magazine. I was just lucky that when the book was done, thanks to one of my professors who had liked the book enormously, Mouse was the one which published it. At that time, Mouse was a very big, major institution. So that's how it garnered so much ill will.
No, so what was that ill will? That was what I was coming to. What exactly was the issue?
Look, the book, um, the sequence is extremely fragmentary, and it is not a linear narration at all. I think the idea was that if you go with the flow as you tend to go with a thriller or a detective novel, because then with those novels you have the patience to wait till the end as to the who done it, right? But this was not a who done it, but I was still taking it. I mean, it was jumping one theme to the other, and as you proceed, you realize that the novel is being told to a woman with whom this guy has no relationship at all now, but he's still talking to her. And the other thing that keeps the book together is the author's tone. So all kinds of things happen, and if you don't have the patience, and at that time it was quite, at least in Marathi, it was quite revolutionary, and I had not given it any thought. So what the Marathi folks absolutely, all I got was in Marathi you have a phrase called shawl jodi te jode. You know, you wrap it up in a shawl, lovely shawl. But there was no shawl. It was just jode. The boot was out and it was flung at me at every point. They were, you know, please forgive me for saying this, but even today, I don't know what happens in Hindi or the other languages, but even today in Marathi, for instance, they have to have a label. Novel, play, modern, this, that. But mine did not fit into anything. So, and there was so much anger which I can't understand.
If I'm going to interrupt you here, was there a parochial element in this?
Oh, huge, I think. Huge. And you know, because I was using 3 languages, but I was, most of the time, if I'm not mistaken, today the trend is that you intersperse Marathi with English all the time. That is not something that I was doing at all. But once in a while an entire passage would come in English, very rarely. But my Marathi was very different. Many people even today think that I reinvented the language. And my syntax, my grammar, everything was very different. So there was an enormous amount of resentment, and they ascribed it to the fact, according to their notions of facts, that I was a fashionista, and I was, very honestly, if I had thought about it, I wouldn't have written the book. You know, where does one have the vocabulary here? 4 grades in English, I mean 4 standards in English is, Marathi is all that you have done. But I was very lucky, I had enough Marathi for this. I stopped writing, I mean I wrote Bedtime Story in Marathi, and as you are well aware, I mean the edition of 1000 or 1500 took 29 years to sell.
No, that you have to tell us that story in some detail, that you wrote Bedtime Story, which is based on the Mahabharata, after a few years from this earlier episode.
I wrote it very soon, in Marathi.
Yes.
Yeah. So I began writing it, and soon after that Mrs. Gandhi declared her emergency. And I had taken those 4 themes from, 4 episodes from the Mahabharata, because I thought this is in our bloodstream, and when I ring changes on it, they will stand out very strongly. And that is what, my first episode was about Ekalavya.
Which you argued, which you overturned on its head, more or less. Absolutely. The whole idea of Ekalavya.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the fact that, you know, some people take it that the way Ekalavya, in a very polite fashion, puts Dronacharya in his place. But it was taken as a Taritsa Vakya. In Marathi you have a sentence called Taritsa Vakya. That I thought would be the totally wrong response to it, because I wanted to internalize the reader to internalize the fact that it is possible for a Dalit or a tribal not only to be, he was the first tribal to be totally self-made, and we never acknowledge that. And it's so important in our times. Not only that, he takes it further. As I said, he tells Dronacharya off in a very polite way, but I think it's a very powerful reply to Dronacharya's.
No. So basically, let's
Move
must
forward.
have been, yes, but it must have been a kind of a virtual Kiran Nagarkar's virtual challenge to Brahmanism.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing is, in Maharashtra, I don't know about other places, it's not just Brahmanism. Every bloody caste Hindu thinks they are above. Brahmanism, of course, is very badly threatened. But the Marathas also think the same way about the Dalits and the tribals. I mean, look what we are doing to the Naxalites. Anyway, I don't want to. Time is limited, so I don't want to. But you know, at least with Ekalavya, there was a kind of closure in my play. But with Draupadi, you can't have a closure.
No, you cannot.
I cannot. At the same time, my Draupadi, I think, is a very strong character. And Siddharth, I must say this to you. It saddens me no end that the play is not done here, you know, because it is so relevant.
Tell me, what exactly, going back, because people have forgotten that Bedtime Story immediately also ran into trouble. And as you said, it was not actually published, it was to be shown. What was the issue at that time?
There were so many issues.
This was 1977.
77. It was the first reading was at Dr. Lagu's place, okay? If and when you have the time, I'll tell you about that, but just I will skip it. But because it was not allowed to be even rehearsed, and there were threats against everybody, Rekha, everybody, Dr. Lagu got all kinds of amateur groups together. Then there was that censor board meeting, and Mepu Rege or MP Rege, the philosopher, and another very fine critic came along. And they thought, the censor board thought that these two people had come along because they detested my work and were horrified to find that they had come to defend it. And as luck would have it, you know, you can't at that time, at least I don't know how things have changed, you can't mention the name of Buddha, you can't mention the name of Gandhi. So some of the cuts were very small and some of the cuts were page long. So there were 78 cuts that the play got. But that didn't leave much of the play, frankly. But as the whole thing progressed, you know, these people come from outside, most of them. They have a stipend and they get one meal. And as it came to 12 o'clock, everybody got very impatient. And so 78 came down to 24 cuts, fortunately for me. But we had the censorship certificate, and what kicked in was the extra legal censorship. So they would not, Shiv Sena, the Hindu Mahasabha, they would not allow it to be performed. And they kept threatening Rekha and everybody.
So we are talking exactly 40 years ago, pressure from Hindu groups in this
Oh, indeed, indeed.
to say that you cannot show a play on the Mahabharata, which really connects with what you have been saying a lot lately, that freedom of expression, freedom of speech is always very fragile. That has been one of the themes that you have spoken a lot about in various ways.
Do I feel despair? I think I could not have used a milder word. Because, you know, Siddharth, I think you're much younger than I am. But I, like it or not, I was born at a time, okay, I was only 6 years old when Gandhiji was murdered. But I remember it distinctly. And not because I was so aware of something of sort. I'll tell you why I remember it. That is the only time, you know, I come from a very poor family. But my uncle had given us a medium band radio. So I heard it on the radio, okay. My mother said, oh, look what's happened. And Hindu colony is where I was staying, genteel people. I don't know what we were doing there. But it just became so silent because there were some RSS people there. And the fear was that people from outside are going to come and bump these guys off. So that is how I had some inkling about the kind of animosity that the RSS aroused in those days. At the same time, the fact that the RSS was a very tightly knit group. If I sound as if at the age of 6, I was already an extremely flawed fan of Gandhiji, that's absolute crap. It took me a hell of a long time to understand that this guy was something else.
I just want to now explore a little bit of your Bombay work, what I call your Bombay work. You are, for me, the quintessential writer on this city. You have explored its angst, but its humor and its physical spaces. And Ravan and Eddy is a laugh riot. And I must say, and I have asked you this question before, rest in peace, is Kiran Nagarkar getting angry? Angry, very angry. So this trilogy really is your understanding of this city?
To a great extent, yes. I have not dealt with the fact that what are these high-rises doing in this beautiful city? What have we gone and done to it? And also, you know, because I now have become, unfortunately you detect it, but even in my conversation, I have been promoting, why are we leaving space for roads? We should just have buildings there, nahi? I mean, you know, okay, my sympathies might not be with this current government, but thika yaar, they're supposed to be doing something for this city. What are they doing? They're building that, they're putting that statue up. We could have at least 6 or 10 hospitals, and this country needs primary health care and hospitals so desperately. And the funny thing is, we don't know, these people, do they know a thing about Shivaji? I mean, I really think Shivaji would have scoffed, because he did care for his people.
Precisely, and that is one thing that they
are completely unaware of it. And do they know, I mean, do they know anything about the man? No, they don't. I mean, you know, it took Pansare to tell us that and also my professor, Pansare, to tell us that the way of taxation that Shivaji imposed was far more enlightened. So, you know, I mean, do they, anyway, who pays taxes? Taxes, the rich hardly ever pay taxes. But what I'm trying to get at is that you don't even know your subject. As you have seen in Cuckold, what we are dealing with Cuckold is the erasure of memory. And what is going on today on a monster scale is the erasure of memory.
No, so memory, it definitely is something that plays a part in the way you have expressed yourselves in many things. Also, I would say manipulation of memory, certainly, that we are seeing today.
Yeah.
You mentioned Cuckold, again, a book that completely takes an opposite view of Meera's life. In a genteel way, maybe, but completely looks at it from the God's Own Terrorist. You have taken God's Little Terrorist. You've taken this young liberal boy who then comes across this. So really, your critic might say you have a warped view of life. I say, as a fan, you have another way of looking at things. So would you say that's the large theme of what you've done, the bigger themes of what you've done?
What is the larger theme?
That don't look at something, but try to look at it from another point of view, because it completely will change your opinion. Therefore, cosmopolitanism, therefore open-mindedness and all that. Would you say that those play a big role in when you start thinking?
Absolutely. You know, I mean, and so that let me not even for a second claim that I came to these things on my own and that's how I started writing. No, I am not that kind of writer. The themes choose me. You know, I did not start out. But at the same time, in my mind, one thing I have always been certain about, and that is that For instance, recently, about 4 months ago, a German journalist came here, and out of the blue, she asked me, "What do you think is the quintessential quality of an extremist?" Because God and Soldier, people think is about terrorism, but it is primarily about extremism, any kind of extremism. And my take on it is that, usually I'm not able to give coherent answers and articulate answers on the spur of the moment. I was very lucky on that day, because all my life I have been promoting the notion that whenever I have written kind of didactically or whatever, that don't take your parents to be the final authorities on wisdom. Don't take your teachers to be the final authorities. And last of all, don't take yourself to be the, God himself who knows what is right and wrong. Which means the one thing that has to come into play all the time is doubt and introspection. And I think if you look at the mindset of an extremist, as we have found in our own country, it is incapable of doubt or introspection. Otherwise, what would you do with the double speak? Every single leader from the regime today is indulging in such monstrous double speak. And there is, the curious thing is that we don't even not only say that you're doing double speak, but we don't hold them responsible.
Have we abdicated as citizens, as institutions?
There will be voices, and forgive me for saying the word grand, but truly grand, fine voices. But, at some point in time I had said that democracy is not a gift, you have to earn it on a daily basis. So what has happened? And, you tell me, Siddharth, how can 67 years be removed so rapidly from our memory? After all, we are the creatures. I know that lots of people can't stand Nehru, and again their view of history is so distorted. I mean, to blame Nehru for not bringing capitalism to India is, I can't think of anything more asinine. Pakistan brought it over, and look where they are. We can't even look at our neighbors and we don't know this. I mean, they are completely dependent on America and other people, and it's the military, industrial military complex which runs the place. But we don't, and as you would know infinitely better than I, the industrialists of India came to these guys, to Nehru and everybody else, and said, we have no money to finance the major industries, the machines that make machines. So what this myth which has been created, that Nehru and the others are responsible for.
Well, that's the distortion of history and all that.
Absolutely, yeah.
What is the role of the writer in a system like this? The writers of India, some of them, I think did something amazing last year. They stood up,
Yes.
they were counted.
Yes.
I noticed, by the way, that almost every writer that stood up was old and a veteran. What is the role of the writer?
I might be getting into dangerous territory here. I was, Nayantara ji and everybody was doing it, okay? And my letter was ready. One of the facts that I learned after writing that letter was that they are not allowed to take the money back. I got 36 or 35,000. The later authors got much more. But I was not going to part with it and park the money with them. This much I was pretty sure of. Either you take the bloody money and make my gesture worthwhile, or don't. So this came through. I was pissed off. Oh, sorry. I was really very angry, and I still am, as I'm sure you are. Don't tell me it's not possible to find who killed our 3 authors. Pansare and everybody, Daborkar and that. So there is something going on there. And the impunity is what we are so easy with. those authors got up and said it. At the same time, to answer your question, I do want to state one thing. For instance, when I watch, Arun and I were partners for 25 years at least, okay? When I read his poetry, and we were not just partners in advertising. It's difficult to understand this, but we spent about 12 to 14 hours a day together, huh? Because we were pushed all the time. Now, Arun overtly never wrote anything political, but I know Arun was totally political. So, I am not going to make these kinds of demands that writers must come out. Sartre will come out, Camus in his own way will come out. Nagarkar does not know any better, so he opens his bloody mouth. Yeah. However, I feel extremely resentful about is that when there is an occasion when you just have to stand up, and the majority of our authors, I have learned, don't stand up because they are with the other guys. Now, this is something which I cannot come to terms with. I would have thought, that again, maybe I'm taking on too many years, but I thought to be a writer would mean that you know right from wrong, and that somewhere along the way you will stand up for it. Doesn't matter if in a poem, in a kind of obtuse way you will go to that. And I do not see the point of disowning Nehru, Patel, Abdul Kalam Azad, and I don't want Gandhi to be brought out with the bloody broom and not the toilet there, and you completely forget the freedom movement. I mean, are we kidding? Is there any other country in the world which won freedom against the mightiest empire of the world through this bizarre notion of a non-cooperative, non-violent way?
Something I want to pick up, and maybe we can kind of wind up on that note, and that is what next? Because if a writer can be political in an obtuse way, what is the next work that's coming out which you are working on, which will perhaps address our concerns in a poetic, writerly way?
So that first of all.
So what are you writing, please?
I caught the drift of the thing, because I know that I can never trust you. No, but I said that I'll tell you what. Let me say this as clearly as possible, and I did not mean to in any way. We have this kind of camaraderie and relationship, so I don't mind saying that. But till a book is published, for me there is no book. Okay, that is a fact, and because I have, I did Green write a book called Chronicles of a Wasted Life? I think he did, okay? And he came out with that title, but it's my title, okay? He should pay me for it. And Green is very important for me, extremely important. But I want to just go back to God Will Soldier for a minute.
Yes.
There is, it is the exploration of an extremist. I mean, he gives up his terrorism, but he's still a terror in terms of extremism. I mean, he goes to America, whatever he does. But there was also one other channel opened out by his brother in the form of writing a book about reimagining Kabir. And for me, did I know what I was doing? Of course not. I was somewhere staying with a friend of mine, and I started going into this, But it became very central to me, Siddharth, because first of all, he's fun. Hmm? He does not philosophize solemnly. He goes to a whorehouse, etc., etc. But when he goes to heaven, and God says, after all, we are all compassionate and merciful. So he thinks, oh, that means everybody will be allowed in. And he doesn't. God says, are you kidding? Then what is the problem? I mean, what is righteousness and what is wrong in life? And then Kabir ends up with this sentence, there is only one God and her name is life. She is the only one worthy of worship. All else is irrelevant. I have somehow or other got stuck to this. I have always wanted my Kabir to be sung, okay? I was hoping that someone, abroad it was done, but I was hoping someone like Rahman or someone who has it, I don't know whether he's any good anymore, I don't know, but am I any good anymore, I don't know. But who will put it to music? The Kabir Dohas and always this and also this, so that Advani ji, even perhaps Modi, I don't know, and the IS, without knowing, because the rhythms would be so fantastic, would be humming the song without knowing that they're doing it. So, I like subversive clandestine activity.
That's what I think it is, mainly. That is what Nagarkar, to sum up this. I'm going to actually throw in one last question, which I want to then connect with something else, which we'll probably use earlier. People will not forgive me if I don't ask this. What is your own view of these two rascals, Ravan and Eddie? Your ending, unfortunately, leaves very little room for manipulation. Yeah. But what is your own view? Are they? Shouldn't somebody make a film on Ravan and Eddie?
Are you kidding? Oh my God, I'm fed up. I'm really. Can't this? Siddharth, I'm talking to you, of course. Siddharth, you tell me, aren't those two characters made for films and serials? Once the films are done on the 3 books, I have enough material for serials, yaar. What? I'm just fed up. They come, they ask, they make you work, and they leave you. Cuckold, you have to be absolute ass not to understand. This is a series. 100 episodes are all there. And they can't see it.
So what do you think of these two fellows?
Forgive me, I love
rascals.
Them. They're rascals, and they will make compromises, they will make blunders, but they survive, and not just survive. They come up with their heads.
Is that Mumbai for you?
It was.
It was.
It was.
Wonderful. Yeah. Thank you, Kiran.
God bless you.